So much for that kind introduction. I'm really excited to share information about social connection. First thing I want to share with you to connect with all of you socially here is that I am 1/4 English. Yes, my father's father has his ancestry in England, and I was sent to boarding school in England before going to college. My parents made me defer my admission to college here at Harvard, and I went to Rodin School. I think it was for finishing school. I'm not sure how that, if I really finished or if I met the expectations for the year that they expected me to have. But I will share that I had a phenomenal year in Brighton. It was one of great learning and growth. I love London. I love the UK. And I participated in a social connection community service program at Rodin School, where every week I met with an elderly resident. Mind you, I cannot remember, but they got a cab for me to go from Rodin to the senior living facility, and I visited with an elderly, lovely woman who is 82, reminded me much of my own grandma, and I spent tea time with her every single week, and I looked forward to it. It was a tremendous experience. I hope these types of community service projects and offerings are still available to high school students, middle school students, college students, even medical students. So, power of social connection. I am the current president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. I'll be finishing my 2-year term in November at the American College of Lifestyle Medicine annual meeting in Orlando, Florida. If you're not going to visit with us live, please do join us virtually. It will be a tremendous event. And I am now actually I must update the slide. I was promoted to associate professor part-time, sharing a little joy with us, hoping to connect here with you on multiple levels. All right, let's get going with the material I'm going to cover in my short time with you. Thank you for spending this Tuesday evening with me. We'll cover what's the evidence that social connection actually impacts chronic disease, identify different types of social connections that can improve health, and explore steps to cultivate something that we call high quality connections. Let's get right into the UK. I started with it. I am partial to the UK for the reasons I already described. I would love for you to go ahead and take a look at the spotlight on loneliness in the UK. Talking about social connection, but what's the opposite of that? Loneliness. So you can see many startling statistics here. 13% of us feel lonely all the time. That's concerning. 1 million people age 65 always or often feel lonely. That's where these community service projects could come in handy. You can see 7 in 10 people know a friend who is lonely. 92% of us find it difficult to tell others they are lonely. Part of this is to normalize speaking about social connection and asking about loneliness. Now, social connection has been in the medical literature for decades. Did you know that? I didn't until I really dove deeply into this subject, and I've been deep in this subject for many years. Look at this, 1923. That's the first study I could find in PubMed that talked about social connection. I'll reveal that one in just a moment. And then in 1948, there were 2 studies. Interesting that social and preventative geriatrics, again, thinking about the elderly, but we're not just going to focus on the elderly in this presentation, but you can see there is a leaning towards the elderly here, but it's so important for middle age, for young adults, for teens, even elementary school. But one of these first studies looked at a survey of medico-social problems connected with health and illness in later life in the journal Geriatrics. Then in 1979, there were 53 studies in the medical literature. One of those is a seminal study we're going to cover in detail by Berkman and Syme. Lisa Berkman was in California at the time. Now she's at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and is a colleague of mine, as I also serve as faculty in the School of Public Health. Then in 2000, there were 208 studies, 2010, 841. And look at this jump 6 years later, 2016, 2059 journal articles, one of which was my connection prescription, which I'll share with you later. But then look at 2020. I know you know that date and what was occurring at that time. 3,688 journal articles. And by 2023, there were 5,006 journal articles that were published. So here's the very first one that I talked to you about. Some relation between our health and our environment, a study of the prevalence of disease in the city of Detroit with special reference to the influence of the type and sanitation of dwellings upon disease. Where we live, who we live with, what's around us, where we live in our environment, our social determinants of health. Look at this. This was looked at back in 1923. Let's bring it into medicine. There'll be many medical professionals listening to this, I know, some physicians and other healthcare providers on the line today in our Zoom room. Thank you for being here. I'm going to share with you strong peer support in a small rural group practice, medical practice, brings friendship, pride, and loyalty, all of which motivate retention. We're having a problem here in the United States with retention of healthcare providers. Groups that provide us with a sense of place, purpose, and belonging tend to be good for us psychologically. They give us a sense of grounding and imbue our lives with meaning. They make us feel distinctive and special, efficacious and successful. They enhance our self-esteem and sense of worth. I love this journal article and what it is conveying here. I just finished grand rounds. We have well-being rounds at Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital, where I hold my appointment here at Harvard Medical School in the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. And we also focused on social connection. How are we doing this? We're doing well-being rounds in Zoom rooms, and we're allowing for that post-presentation discussion so that we can actually start talking about our own lives, sharing a little bit about what's going on with us, like we used to before COVID, when our meetings were all in person. All right, you have likely heard that Vivek Murthy has declared that we are in a loneliness epidemic, and he has called upon the healthcare sector to help solve this. And we are rising to this call and to this task. I'll share with you why and what type of consequences we can experience, our patients experience, when there's poor or insufficient connection. That is a 29% increase of risk of heart disease, 32% increased risk of stroke, 50% increased risk of developing dementia for older adults. Additionally, lacking social connection increases the risk of premature death by more than 60%. It's time to take this pillar seriously. So let's get on the same page with some definitions. Social connectedness is the perception of adequate care and support in relationships. Social isolation is the deficit of social relationships and contact with others that provide support. Then there's loneliness, the perception of lack of connection with others. This is all from the CDC, and you can visit the website for more. I love that here in 2024, we are learning about the brain and how social connection, isolation, and loneliness impact the brain, and where in the brain we see these effects. With stress, the amygdala, the hypothalamus, with a reward system and feeling good, getting that dopamine rush, striatum, ventromedial prefrontal cortex. And then for social connection, medial prefrontal cortex, temporoparietal junction. I urge you to go ahead and look at Neuron Review at this article to find out more. Jane Dutton, who is a psychologist that has spent her career on social connection. She is a PhD, not an MD, but she does like to use medical analogies, specifically with blood vessels. A connection is the dynamic living tissue that exists between two people where there's some contact between them involving mutual awareness and social interaction. Jane Dutton leads the way here to help us identify high quality connections and social connections in the workplace. And then Ned Hallowell, you may be familiar with his work, Driven to Distraction, put him on the map here in the United States with his work in ADHD. Prior to that, he wrote a book in 1999 called Connect. I read that book in 1999. It had a big impact on me. And then I went to several of his lectures here locally. He was a professor at Harvard Medical School, then left to start the Hallowell Centers. It's interesting that Jane and Ned are leaders in this field and had never met, but I did connect them. And fortunately, they are now able to collaborate. Ned Hallowell talks about social connection, and he also talks about other vital ties. I wonder if you can think what those vital ties, that social connectedness, might include. The picture on the right is giving us a few clues. So connectedness is the key to living a fulfilling life. 12 vital ties. Ready? Family of origin, immediate family, friends and community, work and activities, beauty on the right, the past, nature and special places, also on the right, pets and other animals, also on the right, ideas and information, like what we're doing right now, connecting around the idea of social connection and this information. And then institutions and organizations like your own plant-based health professional UK society. And then greater truth or spiritual faith. Lastly, a connection with yourself. Truly, you won't be able to connect with others if you don't have a full understanding of yourself. So this involves some work for each of us. This is when I noted that Jane Dutton and Ned Hallowell were referencing each other, yet didn't know each other. So I email connected them. I read this in one of Jane Dutton's books. She said, oh, you need to understand what social connection is. And Dr. Ned Hallowell talks about this in his book, Connect. I love this from 1999. Listen, a 5-minute conversation can make all the difference in the world if the parties participate actively. To make it work, you have to set aside what you're doing, put down the memo you were reading, disengage from your laptop, abandon your daydream, and bring your attention to bear upon the person you are with. Usually when you do this, the other person or people will feel the energy and respond in kind naturally. So this is a basic human need. Many of you studied psychology. You're familiar with this hierarchy of needs, and you know the person on the right hand of the screen, and you identify him as Abraham Maslow, and this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you can see that physiologic needs are at the base. So this would be food and water, then shelter or safety needs, and then social belonging needs. This was put forth in 1943. Here's just another hierarchy I'd like you to take a look at to remember: physiologic needs, safety needs, and love and belonging needs. And we're going to talk about love and where that is in the brain as well, and the different types of love. Here's one type that we're familiar with, many of us intimately familiar with, some of us not yet or haven't experienced this, but can imagine it and have friends that have. The need to have a close relationship with another, bonding when we are born. So I'm talking about a hormone called the bonding hormone or love hormone. It's over here on the right. Some of you are recognizing its chemical structure, I know, and you're putting it in the chat, I'm sure. Yes, oxytocin from the Greek, but oxus sharp and tokos childbirth. You remember this from your health professional school days, learning that this is how we give birth with uterine contractions, as well as feed babies with breast milk, with milk let down. You may not know this part. Oxytocin was first synthesized by Vincent de Vigneault in 1953. So important, he won the Nobel Prize for this. So just to go back to a little biology, this is a basic human need. love, and belongingness. And it is naturally what we experience as babies when we enter this world, and our mothers feel this bond and release this oxytocin. Of course, it's through the hypothalamus pituitary gland and then the pituitary stalk. And it is, in fact, the posterior pituitary that releases oxytocin, and only one other hormone, vasopressin. What activities can increase oxytocin besides, of course, uterine contractions and milk letdown? Well, holding hands, hugging, massaging, cuddling, intimacy, petting a dog or a cat or a pet. Remember, that was one of the vital ties that Ned Hallowell talked about with animals. When you pet your cat or your dog or furry friend, you can release oxytocin. Interestingly, results show that the dog or furry friend also releases oxytocin. This brings us back to PubMed and that seminal study I told you about by Lisa Berkman and Syme. This study was done in Alameda County. It was in the time of 1965 to 1974, prospective 9-year study. They looked at men on the left, women on the right, all different age groups, 30 to 49, 50 to 59, 60 to 69. And then they determined their level of connections, social indexes, what they used. The diagonal lines here are representing individuals with the least connections. On your y-axis here, you see the percentage that died from all causes over the course of this 9-year study. As you can see in all age groups, the bar graph that is the highest is the least connections. That diagonal lines in every age group, both men and women, diagonal lines, every age group are the highest, meaning they were the most likely to die. So men and women of all age groups that have the least connections were the most likely to die in the 9-year study. 30 years later, people are still studying this, and this analyzed 16,849 adults in NHANES 3. They used the same social network index to measure isolation. And what did they find? Low social network index scores were predictive of mortality among men and were associated with a risk of mortality similar to that of smoking. Social isolation was also an important predictor of mortality among women, along with smoking and high blood pressure. Some of the graphs are pretty startling. I wanted to share them with you here. On the x-axis, we have months since the interview in this study, and then there's the survival percentage on the y-axis. This goes out all the way to 16 years. As you can see, there are different levels of social network index and social connection. The most isolated are those in the dark black solid line, the lowest line here, meaning has the lowest survival percentage. They're the most isolated. They had the lowest survival percentage. This was for women. What about men? Same thing. Most isolated, the lowest survival percentage. So it's important for us to take this seriously. In coronary artery disease patients, we know socially isolated patients had a 2.4 times the risk of cardiac death compared to their more socially connected peers by research. This prompted me, all of this data, to put together with medical students and other students a connection prescription, which is in the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine, November, December 2017 edition. And you can find a lot more research in there. I'll share with you low quality and quantity of social ties have been linked to the development or progression of cardiovascular disease, recurrent heart attack, atherosclerosis, high blood pressure, cancer, delayed cancer recovery, slower wound healing. Pretty much every specialty in medicine needs to be concerned with social connection. Inflammatory markers, impaired immune function, all areas of medicine, not just people involved in lifestyle medicine. Of course, I'm happy that we have this webinar where you're focused in on this important pillar. And I hope that you will share this with people in your institutions, your academic institutions, your hospitals, your private practices, your clinical practices. Interesting, I say that with time, 2023, again in Neuron Review, we're learning more about the brain and more about the molecular basis of this important pillar. So here you can see on the left, We're looking at responses in the striatum as measured by functional MRI during memory recall. They're greater for more social memories, meaning celebrating with friends. If you remember a time when you're celebrating with friends, you're going to get more of a reward compared with non-social memories, perhaps a time when you received a good grade or did well with a project. And then interestingly here, you can look on B here in this graph. With increased social closeness during positive memory recall correlates with dampening of salivary cortisol following an acute stress exposure. Also, with progression of research, we're learning more and more from Julianne Holt-Lundstad, a premier researcher in this area as well. This is from one of her studies in Annual Reviews of Psychology from 2018. When we talk about social connection, we're talking about structural, functional, and quality of connection. So structural, is it marital status, social network, social integration, living at home, social isolation? Functional, this received support, perceptions of social support, perceived loneliness. And then the quality, is there strain in the relationship, the partnership, or marital status and the marital quality? Someone feeling social inclusion or exclusion. The research is robust, as you can see from this British medical statistician you may be familiar with, A.B. Hill, the Bradford Hill guidelines, looking at the Bradford Hill criteria in relation to social connection. And then there's a summary of supporting evidence. So with strength, the effect size is comparable to and exceeds that of other clinical and mortality risk factors when we're talking about social connection. Consistency, 10 meta-analyses, 276 plus studies using a variety of locations, populations, and methods show a correlation. Exposure gives rise to multiple health-related outcomes, some evidence of a mechanistic specificity, which I've been sharing with you and we'll share more as we proceed. And then prospective epidemiological studies have been performed. I shared one with you already, two actually, demonstrated in nationally representative samples across developmental stages. Several plausible biological mechanisms have been documented. I've shared some. I'm going to share some more in the coming slides. I'd like you to think about that as we proceed, what might be the mechanisms behind the power of social connection. And then coherence fits within the framework of social determinants of health. Experiment, there's non-human animal studies of isolation. There's human social randomized controlled trial interventions, laboratory manipulations of social situations, and then consistency across multiple conceptualizations and measurement approaches. That is why you're going to see more data around lack of social connection, loneliness. This one here is around loneliness, and one of our other epidemics here in the US of diabetes. We have loneliness, we have diabetes, we have dementia, we have obesity, all here in the US as an epidemic. In this study, during the 20-year follow-up period, 4.9% of the study participants developed type 2 diabetes. Various degrees of feeling lonely were reported by 12.6% of the participants. Individuals who felt most lonely had a twofold higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes relative to those who did not feel lonely. This is in loneliness increases the risk of type 2 diabetes, a 20-year follow-up study. And these are the results from the Hunt study you may be familiar with. So let's look at psychosocial explanations presented in the literature for positive effects of social ties. Their social support reduces the impact of stress, may reduce blood pressure, heart rate, stress hormones even, personal control, enhanced belief that they can control their lives, symbolic meaning in marriage or parenthood, peer groups, racial, ethnic identity, and then the coherence factor, fostering a sense of meaning and purpose with the group. And then mental health, having benefits, being in a group and being in concert with everything else in your life. How about the physiologic explanation for health benefits of social ties? We talked about several benefits to the immune system, benefit the endocrine system, benefits the cardiovascular system, reduces physiological responses such as cardiovascular reactivity to both anticipated and existing stressors, as we talked about in our study with the brain. And then here's behavioral explanations for health benefits of social ties. Social ties influence health behaviors, the people around us, what they're eating, what they're preparing for the meal. They also provide information and create norms. A spouse or partner may monitor, may inhibit, may regulate, may facilitate health behaviors. So this is from the Heart and Stroke Association of Canada, how a good support system can help by shortening the time someone may need in the hospital and improve recovery, help the patient to take medication correctly and make healthy lifestyle changes, help the patient remember what the cardiologist or other healthcare provider has told them, and then get the person to participate in cardiac rehabilitation programs, which are underutilized in the US and Canada. Reduce the damage that stress may cause by giving someone that feeling of support. Reduce symptoms of depression, improve your quality of life. So let's talk about mental health just for a moment. Nature Mental Health, September 11, 2023, or 1 year ago. This important study from, yes, your UK Biobank, which is an incredible opportunity for researchers to really dive into topics like this. 13,000 had depression. They looked at over the 9-year period, checked moderate alcohol use, healthy diet, regular physical activity, no smoking, low sedentary behavior, frequent social connections, and healthy sleep. Having 5 to 7 of those 7 healthy lifestyle patterns reduce the risk for depression by 57%. Specifically, social connection reduced the risk for depression by 18%. So quality, quantity, what's the most important thing? I know you know the answer to this. You may not need the research to tell you this, but there is research, and it's in 838 healthy 80-year-olds were examined, and it was noted that the amount of social activity and the social support were related to better cognitive function. Social network size was not strongly related to global cognition. It was that amount of activity that they were getting with their peers and the amount of social support that they felt. So loneliness, social connection has gotten on the map for researchers, as you saw, that growth in the studies published in PubMed when I first started this talk. Interestingly, this has led to looking at subtypes of loneliness. It's an interesting article that breaks loneliness into 4 different categories: those with low loneliness, those with social loneliness, those with emotional loneliness, those with social and emotional loneliness. So really trying to nail down what type of loneliness exists in the world and how those different subtypes may show up for people. Jane Dutton, we're going to get to some of the positive aspects of social connection and her work in Energize Your Workplace to help people feel connected, feel less lonely, and cultivate high quality connections. How do we do that? Well, I told you she likes her blood vessel analogies, and here we go. A high quality connection, like a healthy blood vessel that connects parts of our body, a high quality connection between two people allows the transfer of vital nutrients. It's flexible, strong, and resilient. Whereas a low quality connection, a tie exists, people communicate, they interact, they may even be involved in interdependent work, but the connective tissue is damaged. With low quality connection, there is a little death in every interaction. Okay, so we are striving for high quality connections for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our clients, our patients, our colleagues. So how do we do this? Jane Dutton can tell us. We know if we have a high quality connection because high quality connections have greater emotional carrying capacity. That means the expression of more emotion, both positive and negative, and safety felt in doing so. This brings Amy Edmondson's work into play from Harvard Business School. Amy Edmondson talks about psychological safety. We need to be safe in the relationship so that we can express when things aren't working well and when we are feeling uncomfortable. as a key to a high quality connection. The ability to bounce back after setbacks. You've heard about the growth mindset from Carol Dweck, the importance of looking at mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow. No one is perfect. No relationship is perfect. If you're in a high quality connection, then if there's a mishap, you use that to learn and grow together. The relationship has generativity and openness to new ideas and influence, as well as its ability, this is very important, as well as its ability to deflect behaviors that will shut down generative processes. What behaviors might shut down generative processes or growth in a relationship? I wonder if you can think of any. Type them in the chat. So the silent treatment, bullying, threatening, yelling, these things shut down growth. Gossiping, lying, saying one thing to another, uh, uh, basically not showing another human being respect. If we could go back to kindergarten and think about what we learned in kindergarten, and when we learn to treat others the way we would want to be treated, to honor and respect all human beings, we need to bring that right on back into our adulthood and into our work environments. I know you know what I mean. How do you know if you're in a high quality connection? Feelings of vitality and aliveness are there. There's feeling positive arousal and heightened sense of positive energy. This heightened sense of positive regard, a feeling of being known or being loved. And by the way, we all want to be loved and understood. And then this is felt mutually. Both parties in the connection are engaged and actively participating. So this takes the social brain. We talked about social connections and reducing dementia. And it's the number of activity, remember, and the quality of the feeling of social support that help those elderly people reduce dementia. Well, how could social connection help reduce dementia? Well, because it uses a lot of the brain, several different areas of the brain when we are socially connecting. The amygdala, fusiform face, they're used in feeling to see the feeling in a face. And how about if you're trying to assess out someone's mood? You'll need your medial prefrontal cortex, your superior temporal sulcus. And then, of course, we want to hear what people are saying. We want to see what they're doing. So the visual and auditory cortex are key. I told you there are different subtypes or types of loneliness. Well, just recently in 2024 in cerebral cortex, they have identified different types of love, 6 different types of love. And in this research article, I would draw your attention to evaluate later, they do talk about romantic love, parental love, friendship type of love and strong feeling, stranger, pet, and nature, love of nature. This does bring us back to the 12 vital ties with Ned Hallowell. We're coming full circle as we end together. And this is looking at the different parts of the brain that are activated when people that were subjects listened to different stories about connection in these different arenas of love or had the imagery of the social connection. I want to bring it home with someone who's a good friend of mine, Dr. Bob Waldinger, psychiatrist here at Mass General Hospital in Boston at Harvard Medical School. And this is from the Harvard Gazette article and his work in the adult development study, which is an 80-year-old study. He's the 3rd research director of that. This study looked at Harvard alums and inner city Boston population. So first it started as just men who were at Harvard, and then they added men in inner city Boston, and then they added the wives and the family members of those initial subjects to include a broader spectrum of people that were included in the study. Over the years, researchers have studied the participants' health trajectories and their broader lives, including their triumphs and failures and careers and marriage, and the findings produced startling lessons, and one that Bob says startled him as the research director of this important adult development study. Surprising finding is that our relationships and how happy we are in our relationships has a powerful influence on our health. You know why, because you heard all the data prior to this. So close relationships, more than money or fame, are what keep people happy throughout their lives. That's what the study showed. Those ties protect people from life's discontents, help to delay mental and physical decline, and are better predictors of long and happy lives than social class, IQ, and even genes. That finding proved true across the board among both the Harvard men and the intercity inner city participants. So taking care of your body is important, but tending to your relationships is a form of self-care too. That, I think, is the revelation. That's a quote from Dr. Bob Waldinger, who will be presenting on his work at the annual meeting for ACLM. You can attend virtually or live. I started with Vivek Murthy saying that we have a loneliness epidemic in the US. I showed you your own stats. I'm going to show you some more in my last slide from the UK, but here in the US, we are focusing on the framework that Vivek Murthy has put forward for us to strengthen social infrastructures, to enact pro-connection public policies, mobilize the health sector, reform digital environments, deepen our own knowledge, do more research in social connection, cultivate a culture of connection. I personally told you that I am working at Spalding and at Mass General to help faculty, to help the clinicians, the healthcare providers to enhance their health and well-being. I've been doing this through the Center of Faculty Development, and I've been coaching this group, doing group coaching in lifestyle medicine. And I think you're familiar with the coach approach and with behavior change. And to do this, we need to connect with ourselves. Remember, that's one of the major 12 vital ties, right? Take deep breaths, practice mindfulness and our own self-care so we can enter into this 5-step collaboration cycle fully mindful. We can be empathetic, align motivation, build confidence, set SMART goals, set accountability, and go through this process with our patients so that they feel understood, motivated, supported, engaged, and they have hope. We can be a positive social connection in their life using this coach approach. It is the heart and soul of lifestyle medicine. We have the 6 pillars. We have to put those 6 pillars into play, and that's where we get to work on social connection and be a positive social connection in somebody else's life. This is the program I've been doing for surgeons as well as internal medicine physicians. They just added a new one for me for this fall. I did one this summer, then the fall, and now I have 2 more to do. It's been 3 years. And when you get a group of 12 physicians in a room together, a Zoom room, they don't know each other. Sometimes 1 or 2 know each other, but the hospitals are big places, many faculty. And then we are together weekly for 1 hour for 6 weeks. The bonds that form are incredible just by facilitating these groups. These faculty that often come in burned out, unhappy, lonely, come out the other end after 6 weeks feeling connected and actually connecting to their own sense of purpose, as well as connecting with faculty in the group. And we continue to connect monthly. We have a paving alumni meeting every month, and they're invited to join each month. We've been doing this 3 years now. And that is because I told you that I am 1/4 English. I'm also a quarter Norwegian and I'm half Greek. And this is my mom right here. And she came from, well, her mom and dad came from Basara, the Peloponnese in Greece. And then she immigrated to East Boston, an underserved area here in the Boston area. And I will share with you that she moved in with me, multi-generational homes. That's part of Blue Zones. I'm sure you're familiar with that. She moved in with me when my dad died and my 2 teenage boys, now they're 24 and 22, and my husband, and that was in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and she was from Scarsdale, New York. That's where I grew up, so hours away. And whenever we would have a event, a Mother's Day, a holiday celebration, her birthday, I'd say, "Mama, what do you want for a present? What do you want? What do you want? I'll get you anything you want." Every single time, what did she want? Every single time. It never changed. Many years she was with me, 4 years, every time. She wanted to drive to Scarsdale, New York with me and see Marg and Anne-Marie, her friends of 40 years. And we'd have lunch here, the same restaurant in Scarsdale. And she was never happier than she was laughing and talking about the good old times. These ladies made her feel so good, so alive, so healthy, so happy. So I'm bringing you back to some stats for you to look at in the UK. 36% of UK adults agree their neighbors are like strangers to them. 35% of UK adults are concerned that they're concerned that their loneliness will get worse. 29% of people who feel always or often lonely disagree that they are confident in being able to cope and recover from the impacts of the pandemic, compared to 12% of the UK population as a whole. 38% of people whose ethnicity is Black, Asian, or minority ethnic agree that they often feel alone, like they have no one to turn to, compared to 28% of people of white ethnicity. So I'm going to end with one of my absolute favorite quotes. At the end of the day, people won't remember what you said or did. They will remember how you made them feel. And that's about social connection from Maya Angelou. So I hope this has given you some food for thought, some ideas, some strategies for yourself, for your patients, and some research, maybe ideas that you want to look at through PubMed, or you actually want to perform perhaps some research on your own. Thank you so much for having me.
That was absolutely incredible. Thank you so much. And so many areas that I hadn't really considered myself, and new angles that I feel hasn't really been brought into the discussion in lifestyle medicine. And obviously we've had the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic more recently, which has maybe not yet translated into some of the textbooks. So I'll kick off with one of the questions that came up. This is from someone who's based in the US, and she says there's a growing trend. There's a growing trend, especially in the USA, where pandemic era work from home flexibility is being reversed, and employees seem to be resisting this return to office full time. As we know, workplace loneliness and burnout rates go hand in hand. And despite these pandemic related burnout continuing to rise and amplify amongst certain populations, which you mentioned, one would just assume that a return to the workplace would be welcomed. Why is this sort of counterintuitive? What are your thoughts on this trend, and why are people resisting that return to the office if it's so good for our health?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I just want to share. We've been together an hour. I feel connected. Okay, here we go. So my chairman left. Well, he's going to Missouri to be the chair there, and he's left our Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. We're all very sad. And we all came in on Wednesday last week. I wasn't going to go in. And again, you're comfortable. So why is this happening? Because we're comfortable at home. We get a lot done. The commute, if you're in the US and you've been to Boston, you understand the commute to Boston is an hour from anywhere. It's just an hour. It's always an hour. It's crazy. And then of course I have to pay for parking. And then you have the hour commute back home. So that's literally 2.5 hours plus money. But this was my chairman for 18 years, and he supported me. And I mentioned I got a promotion. Well, he supported me to do that. So I went in. I can't tell you the joy I felt going in and seeing my colleagues. Some I hadn't seen in so long, because Spalding has got several different hospitals in the Harvard system. It's not just in the one main building. We're in very different locations around the Boston area. It was so joyful. We all said it. We felt so alive, and we felt so much more connection when we were together. So why is this happening? Why is it that we don't want to go in? I believe it has everything to do with the commute that most of us have to do by car. I can't bike into Spalding. That would not be safe. There's no good routes to do so. And I have a stationary exercise bike. I've set myself up pretty nicely at home. I'm not on it today. I didn't want to distract you all, but I am usually on it in a Zoom meeting. If you've seen me in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine or another meeting, I got a pretty nice setup here where I bike probably 2-3 hours in the day when I'm on Zoom meetings. And then I have my healthy options for my own food right here. I don't have to make that hour commute. I don't have to pay for the parking. So it's convenience. That said, it's a great question, because it does make us all think, so what is optimal? I personally think going in a little bit, like maybe it's at least twice a week where you can connect with your colleagues in person. I mean, we were hugging each other, hugging. We hadn't seen each other for so long, and that hug is just so lovely and warm. So if we could just do a little bit more of that, we'll have to research it. I mean, it would be really fun, and I'd love to do this at Spalding, to research where we are now as a department in terms of our happiness, our health, our feelings of isolation or loneliness, and then institute this, I would say, recommendation. I'm not good with requirements, even when I teach. Anyway, I like to invite people. So this invitation and strong recommendation that the people come in for two times a week in person, and then check the health. Let's check their behaviors. Let's check their sense of loneliness. I think it's going to require research to get something done.
Totally. Yeah, really interesting food for thought. And I suppose that balance of maybe having a couple of days in, and then that also allows, caregivers to be there for companion animals or children, or be able to get things like laundry done. I don't know how people did that when everyone was in the office 5 days a week. It's difficult to balance, that's for sure. There are so many questions flooding in, and that's great. And
Okay.
this one is really relevant because we're obviously on an online Zoom right
Right,
now. Has
right.
anyone done a study on whether online meetings still do release oxytocin? And does the quality of online connection relate to any kind of release of oxytocin? I imagine a relaxed sort of webinar like this might be quite different to maybe getting online and being told you're being made redundant, online. It's going to be really different, and depending on the quality. What are your thoughts on that? Is there any data about this, or are online meetings just devoid of this hormone?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. I would have to quickly right now, somebody could, I'd probably do it for us, while I'm talking, so we can go into PubMed and see online meetings, release of oxytocin. Here's what I can just share again, because I can't just tell you the research in this moment. I can tell you this. When I am in those meetings and it's the sixth session with the faculty, and we've been together for 5 hours, and so we're at the end, so 6 hours, there is sometimes tears from others in the room. I am feeling sad to say goodbye. And this is just, we've only seen each other. I don't know them. I told you it's a big hospital. I don't know them before they come into the Zoom room, and then they want to meet in person afterwards. So I believe that a group like that, with continual positive interactions week after week, hour after hour, can create a feeling of comfort, a feeling of social connection. I'd love to see if you checked my oxytocin, their oxytocin, if it increased after the meeting. I would love to see that study. I would love to do that study. Thank you for the for the recommendation if it isn't already done. But I would say that, a lot of the research on oxytocin that you saw, it has to do with physical touch, right? Hugging, holding hands, petting. So let's see if something like a virtual meeting or a Zoom room could potentially release oxytocin. Somebody has already Googled this and found the answer, so does somebody want to share it?
Please do share in the chat. Let's try and get through a few of
Okay,
the,
okay,
because people are really keen to
okay,
get questions answered. I'm
okay.
getting the pressure. So are health consequences the same if a person naturally likes to be alone, which I guess in social terms might be described as an introvert, or if someone is more extroverted and they're more alone, does it have more of a detrimental impact? There are people who like to, recharge on their own. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It does come up pretty much every time I give a talk to healthcare professionals, medical students, or pretty much anyone. Why? Because the person who is introverted, who says, "Oh, yikes, I like people, but I like my alone time," is listening to this saying, "Well, I don't think this is going to apply to me because I don't really enjoy being around people all the time." So truly, loneliness, as you saw in the definition, loneliness is a subjective feeling. So You can be in a room with lots of people and still feel lonely. You could be alone and feel great. You could be alone and feel really happy and supported because of the relationships that you have and that you've cultivated over time, that when you're alone, you're fine. So it really is personalized. And that's lifestyle medicine, isn't it? It really, you must connect deeply with the patient, the person in front of you, and find out. You can't just say to them, you need to do, okay, you could say, here are some guidelines. This is what we know from research. It's important to feel supported. We do know one thing. I'll share one thing, that it's important to feel connected to at least one person. So Bob Brooks calls this a charismatic adult. He's one of my mentors. He's a psychologist here at Harvard Medical School. He's written Raising Resilient Children, The Charismatic Advisor. He's wonderful. He talks about the charismatic adult, someone from whom you gather strength. We need someone. Oh, okay. Is there someone in this world that doesn't need someone? Okay, maybe. The majority of us need someone. And children, if you look at Ned Hallowell's work in that book, Connect, he talks about this, but also he has a book about the childhood roots of adult happiness. By the way, this has everything to do with adult happiness too. And he mentions for children, they need one person. It doesn't have to be the parent. Doesn't have to be the parent. They need one person they feel a connection, a strong connection with, in order to get through life's challenges. So there are general recommendations. And if you look at literature, it's to connect with a person 6 to 7 times in the week. Could it be the same person? Sure. But to at least have touch points with someone 6 to 7 times. Now, do some people want more than that? Do some people want to connect even twice a day or more? Sure. It's like a general idea of try to connect with someone each day, 6 to 7 times. So it's a general idea, but you must ask the person in front of you, how are you feeling? Do you feel lonely? And don't feel awkward about that, right? Just bring it up. Just like, do you feel depressed? Do you feel lonely? Do you feel like it's normal? Like there's no stigma against this. And then you work with them. Well, what would it take? This is the coach approach, right? What would it take for you to feel less lonely? What do you need? Someone may say, I just need to call my high school friend. We had a spat. Who knows? Or someone may say, I need to join a group. I need to be with people. I want to be in a group. And then you say, okay, well, what's possible for you? Is there a YMCA? That's a local gym for us, inexpensive to join. So I hope that helps. It's absolutely personal. It's a perception. It's subjective. And we want to focus on that feeling of loneliness or lack of social support. Or are you feeling, another question I've been asking is, do you feel supported? Do you feel like you have social support? Well, what do you mean? Are there people in your life that you feel connected to, that if you had a problem, you could talk to them easily? You could go at it that way.
That's so helpful. We went really online as an organization at Plant-Based Health Professionals in the pandemic, but we still have kept a sort of hybrid approach. We've had recently our in-person conference, we had a social on Saturday night, and I think it's always difficult because you can't be in all these different places in the UK and the world at the same time, but it is a special experience to come together in person, that's for sure. I'm just going to launch this quick poll while
Okay.
I ask a final question, which is from a physician who's based in rural Ireland, or not super rural, but definitely a quieter place. And he's asked, if I see a lonely person in my clinic, what should I advise? How can I support them as a health professional to reduce their
Mm.
loneliness?
I love the question. Thanks for asking. So first, identifying it and being open to talking about it is number one. Getting it out and identifying it, that's the first thing. And then or may not know, but now you will know. So in 2008, I became one of the first physicians to be trained in health and wellness coaching. And I've taken 4 or 5 different trainings by now and really focus in on the coach approach and working with people in a collaborative fashion. By the way, this helped me be a better mother. I'm just mentioning, because it's all about curiosity. So if someone, as you describe in your question, were lonely, the first thing I would say is, what's one thing that you could do that would help you to feel less lonely? And as I say, from coaching so many people over the years from 2008 till now, I can't predict the answer to that. You really don't know. Only the person in front of you knows that answer. I would actually ask all of you to think about the answer for that for yourself. Maybe you do feel lonely or not, but how could you feel more socially connected? What would it take for you to feel more socially connected? Like for me, after last Wednesday, to be honest, I want to go in at least once a week and see my friends in the hospital. Okay. But that's so everybody is going to have a different answer. So personalizing it, don't feel okay, they're lonely, and you're gonna say, "Okay, join a, yoga class, join a book club, da, da, da." You're not gonna but they may say, "I don't know. I don't know what to do." So how about that person? Then you say, "Oh, okay. Well, what I like to go to next is hobbies because it's something I know the person likes." Well, what activities do you like to do? Well, I love walking. Hey, what would you think about looking for a walking group in your community? There's possibly also walk with a doc in your community. If they say they like knitting, "Oh, is there a local knitting shop near you?" "Yes, I get my knitting." Do you know if they have any group classes or if they provide any times where you can come in and knit together? So you go again, you go with where their interest is, but you help them get there by asking what they like. They may like reading, a lot of oh, okay. I don't know how that happens, excuse me, but anyway, it's a thumbs up for that. They may they may like reading. Book clubs. Could do those in person or online. So running, tennis, if they feel that they want to get back into athletics so there's such a wide variety. So just opening up opportunity for them based on who's in front of you, what they like to do, what they want to do, what they've done in the past. It's always a good thing. When you did feel less lonely, tell me about your life. When you felt socially supported, tell me what was going on. What were you doing? Oh, we were having Friday night dinners with the neighborhood. We used to this is before COVID. We'd all come together on Friday. I'd bring the salad, so and so would cook this, and we felt really connected. Oh, wow, that sounds like fun. Do you think that there's a possibility your neighbors feel the same and you guys would like to start that up again? S I'm just telling you things that I've heard in the past. I don't know what's gonna apply to your particular patient in front of you, but these are all answers I've heard that I couldn't have predicted.
And that's lovely. And also everything you've been saying, it's like creating that dialogue, that safe space for them to tap into what's really going to resonate with them. You're not going to recommend yoga to everyone or recommend, diving in. It's just opening. Often they have that answer, but it's teasing that out and really creating that space for them. So this has been packed with not only so much incredible research and studies for everyone to go and look into in more detail, but so many practical tips on creating that dialogue and even the self-reflection. I'm sure every single person here today is going to go back and think about how we can be more socially connected and really nurture those relationships in our life. I think it's easy to put work and everything else first, but it's so important to do so. And I think community groups and having a purpose is really, really important. So I know this is online, but I just want to thank everyone for being here. I think it is so nice to see in the comments all of you sharing where you're joining from. And thank you so much as well, Beth, and congratulations on the promotion as well. So exciting. And we are really honored that you could share all of this incredible research with us. And it's really made me rethink how we discuss social connections as a lifestyle pillar. It does not get enough airtime, and it really, really should. I think it's seen as a sort of nebulous, hard to pin down thing, a bit airy fairy compared to the other lifestyle pillars. Actually, it may be the most important, as you pointed out. So yeah, thank you so much. Wonderful. Okay, we'll sign off for the evening and on daytime where you are and anyone joining us around the world. And the recording will be available to PBHP UK members. It will go up on the website in a couple of weeks' time once CPD, CME accreditation and things have been assessed. And do join us for our future webinars as well. And follow Beth as well on social media. All the links are in the sign up page, so please do go and check those out. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good night, everyone.